to 2 sections, as there is a video already on the playlist. And, you know, that video is quite long and it drags on a little bit. And I think that you can, you know, you can categorize them into 2 different sections. Managers understand that making decisions can involve, you know, risk. But it's also essential, you know, when solving problems within the workplace. And often when trying to understand decision making, some might even say it's you know, it's in the same remit and it's equivalent to problem solving. You might consider that decisions are often taken without a clear problem being, you know, understood or resolved, really. But what you need to consider is decisions can be taken lightly without a problem or an issue or a situation actually being there. But making decisions effectively is about considering not just one opinion, considering not just making it on the spot, but considering a number of different variables, a number of different elements of maybe research or data, and maybe using some tools and techniques to help you along the way. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm just going to touch upon the previous session and where we started with that. Okay, so the first session we looked at more about the problem solving, so getting to the root cause of the problem, and, you know, looking at the different techniques that can be used to actually resolve a problem, or get to the bottom of a problem so you can actually solve it, really. But that, I mean, we're loosely basing this around Unit 416, but it can also be useful for Unit 300. It can be useful for basically any sort of problem that you want me to solve as a leader and a manager. And, you know, as a middle manager, and from my experience in, you know, teaching leadership management, being a leader and a manager myself, it's usually you are the person that people come to. And whether that be senior management who want to problem solving from the floor, or whether you've got, you know, one of the people that you're leading that needs a problem solving and you need to, you know, take that to the top. It's important to recognise that, you know, it is going to be part of the day-to-day, and confidently being able to solve problems, confidently being able to make decisions is, you know, it's an important leadership and management skill. So the first part of the session, if you missed it, it will be uploaded onto the playlist this week. But we just looked at really about defining problems, making sure that we're not just looking at the signs and symptoms of problems, but actually getting to the root cause. We looked at analysing problems as well. But we're going to be looking more about decision-making techniques, ways in which decisions can be made to make sure that they are informed decisions, and ways that complex problems can be solved using different methods of decision making for different things, really. So we'll touch upon that. So just to start again, I am just going to go over the definitions of a problem and a decision, but focusing more so on the decision today. So we're looking at different methods to be able to find a conclusion or resolution to a problem, situation, or an issue. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And again, you know, looking at that, problems and issues are usual in organisations. They are normal. Managers understand that in order to be able to work efficiently and effectively, it is part of day-to-day. You know, it's part of day-to-day, dealing with problems and issues quickly, and being able to, you know, confidently make decisions, only demonstrates that, you know, that you are a good leader and a good manager. And, you know, the decisions that we make are not always going to be the right ones. You know, sometimes it might be trial and error. Sometimes it might be, you know, you might make a decision and find out that it really wasn't the best decision to make, but we live and we learn at the end of the day. But what these tools and techniques and methods should allow you to do is become confident in making decisions, even if we know that there is an element of risk, involved in that. So we looked at effective problem solving, and we looked at the first two phases here on the right hand side of the circle. So defining the problem and analysing the problem we looked at on the last session. So tune into that if you want a little bit more information on that. But what we're going to look at today is more about when we touched on generating potential solutions, but we're going to be looking at how we select the best possible solution, and then how we can go about using that best possible solution to then make informed decisions to take action. And again, as I mentioned before, sometimes decisions are trial and error. They're not always the correct ones, so try different approaches, okay? If necessary, if one's not working well, then we can just say, all right, okay, well, let's give this other one a go. So the important thing to realise when you're completing any of these units, when you're, managing a project even, or a complex team activity, or you're leading innovation and change, there's many units that you can think of within the ILM framework that look at solving problems and making decisions. But the important thing that you need to consider is, what type of decision is it? And have you got the authority and the power to be able to make that decision? Because there's absolutely no point in writing an assignment about a problem, which is about solving problems and making decisions, but you can't actually make that decision. So, it's important to think about the level of autonomy, the level of authority, the level of power, and you can be responsible for following that decision through. So, the strategic decision can sometimes be called or linked to corporate strategy, and it's about it could be like a decision, for example, to enter into international markets, for example. So quite a big decision. So if you know that there's a problem around that area, you might not be in the role to be able to make that strategic decision. So it's important to recognize that. Tactical decisions can sometimes be linked to, business strategy, and it could be when decisions, or there might be decisions such as to buy materials from a local supplier, or buy equipment from overseas, and then you're weighing up maybe the costs. Operational decisions is more so what people tend to write their assignments about, at level 3 and level 5, really. And it could be it's more like day-to-day tasks, day-to-day problems solving, day-to-day decision making, or monthly decision making. And it could be something like to train a member of staff in-house to fill a gap in a department, or whether to advertise outside maybe of the organisation. So there's a number of different ways to make decisions and levels of decision making. So recognise that before you do identify the problem and make the decision, because as I mentioned in the previous session, if you pick a problem or that you're wanting to change, or you're wanting to make a decision on, or plan for the future with, and it's too small or too big, you're going to struggle. Trying to find that one that's around about the right size for your role and your responsibilities is key. So again, who has the authority to make the decision? Ask yourself that. Do I have the authority to make this decision? And it's fine if you don't, if maybe you just need a little okay before you do finalize that decision. But if you can't actually action the decision that's being made, then it's probably best to look at something else. When making decisions, there are a couple of characteristics and behaviours that are useful. One of them is being, being quite assertive and showing that you're confident within the decision that you've decided on. But there's also different skills such as task skills, relational skills, and also procedural skills. And I think more so, looking at the skills relating to leadership and building trust with the team members, and allowing people to understand that, that you're confident in that decision, and then they will follow you through with that decision if they have confidence in your ability to make decisions as well. If you're like, oh, I'm not sure whether this one's going to be the right one, but I'm a bit too scared about the other one because that one's got too much, they're not going to be confident in following, working with you towards the decision that's going to be made. So it is really, really, important to be able to think about getting all the teams involved with and getting them, to come along with you and work with you as you're following through with the decision that you are going to make. Task skills, looking at problem recognition and framing that problem, and not just thinking about it as well from one perspective, but thinking about it from different perspectives is quite important. It's also good to be able to generate different ideas when looking at different perspectives. So it might not just be from your perspective, but from the perspective of the customer or the stakeholders or the members of the team, for example. And then, when you are making decisions, being able to actually implement them so they are stuck, and that's a lot to do with the procedural skills of planning, and putting processes in place and streamlining them, and maybe putting plans in place as well. I'll put a quote down here by Theodore Roosevelt because I think it is a really good one. So have a little read about that and have a think about it as well, because I think it is quite important. Moving forward now there are, there's a range of different techniques that you can adopt that you can use for different situations in order to be confident that you're using the right method, really. But it's important to maybe consider which one you're going to use in different situations. Like an example is the cost benefit analysis. It's used a lot in project planning. It's useful for making financial decisions, and it's good because it doesn't only look at the financial benefits, but it looks at other benefits. So for example, you might say that you're looking at doing a cost benefit analysis on equipment, or whether to buy the equipment in England or whether to buy the equipment in China to maybe display some sort of materials or products or something like that. Now, you might say that, okay, cost works out straight away. You can see that the cost is cheaper in China. But then you might say that, when you're thinking of other benefits, such as, the environmental factors, the delivery time, and maybe just, buying the corporate social responsibility of buying locally and investing in your country, you might see that the benefits then outweigh the financial costs. And you might say, well, that just makes me automatically think, if I'm being more environmentally friendly and, I'm going to minimize the delivery time so I can get the products shown at a quicker time, then okay, it is maybe more expensive to buy in the UK, but will probably benefit me in the long run. So yeah, have a little, when you're doing a cost benefit analysis, remember that it's not just about finance. It's got a lot to do with benefits, and there are quite simple templates out there. I think I put 2 of them in in 416 and 300s. And if you look at any project units, you probably got two of them, because there is really complex ones and there's more simplistic templates. So I try and give it a bit of both, so you can maybe it might be worth looking at a complete, and you want to do a cost benefit analysis, complete the simple template first and then move on with the more complex one. Decision trees are primarily used for solving complex problems and making, you know, and looking at different routes to take. They are quite useful, as they provide you with a visual, and it displays all of the steps or the resources and, you know, the requirements that need to go into each step or stage as well. So it's quite good for costing and seeing different routes to take. The heuristic methods, if it's important to think about that, if your aim is to refine a process, then you might want to use this method. Really, it's about using trial and error. It's about not needing something to be 100% perfect at the end. And, you know, developing a website's a good example of using this method, because if you wanted the website to be 100% perfect before you actually set it up live, or, you know, on the launch date, it might take forever. But you might want to trial and error a few pages as you launch it, and this method's quite good for that. The tiered voting, not all decisions need to be made by a single person, and I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. But I like this method because it asks, you know, a group, or it's good, you know, if the whole department's needing to decide on a way forward on something, because you can have quite a few options and get people to vote on them. Then the least amount of options, that one goes out. Then get everybody to vote on it again. Least amount of options, that one goes out, until you basically come to the final one. It's really good if you use more of a participative style of leadership, or a democratic style of leadership as well. And it also was good because people that maybe aren't really confident to speak out can write what they're thinking, and, you know, everyone sort of gets a fair say in this method. The pros and cons is it's you know, it's basic, or, you know, a lot of people do it and don't really think, but it's a technique. Or, you know, you might look at 5 different options and then think of, you know, advantages, disadvantages for each of them, and that might help you to analyze and inform and make an informed evaluation on the decision that you are going to be putting forward. And then the game theory looks at like a little bit like role play, so it makes you look at decisions and what will happen if that decision's made based on different people's perspectives. And I think it's important to understand that trying not to be biased when making decisions it's hard, especially if you think that you know best because you've learned from experience in the past. But just because a decision's been made in the past and it's been made over and over and over and over again, doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best decision that you know that could have been made. I think that game theory is good because it looks at different perspectives, and you may have been making a decision on something for years, and now you're only just about to look at it from different people's perspectives, and now you say, well, you know, why don't we try something else? You know, it might, I don't know, big up sales, it might you know, improve customer satisfaction, it might increase profits. You know, making the same decision all the time doesn't necessarily mean that it's always the best one. You've got to move with the times at the end of the day. So sometimes we ruin situations, and not just thinking of decision making and problem solving and dealing with issues and situations, but thinking about how things are done and how decisions are made, and maybe how them decisions can be reviewed to ensure that the decisions that are being made are the best ones. So looking at the decision-making process, thank you, Mike. There's a couple of key areas to consider as a leader and a manager. There's, you know, there's certainly areas that that people worry about, and there's certain areas that people think, well, you know, if this decision's, you know, made and it's done well, then you know, we could get this, we could do this, we could earn this. The key thing that I think that needs to be considered by everybody before they make a decision is they need to understand any risks involved. Obviously, also considering the rewards that you know from making that decision. And then when you're looking at the, you know, the opportunity cost, sorry about this. When you're looking at the opportunity cost, it's important to consider other options and maybe what rewards or what opportunities could come from them options as well, because it just allows you to understand that, okay, well, if this doesn't work, then there might be an opportunity to go with this different option, and we could get this from it. Every decision will have a sense of uncertainty, and some uncertainty, you know, when taking it. But as long as you're aware of the risks and, you know, you're staying on top of that and you're ensuring that them risks are managed, then, you know, any decision that you make, you can sort of have confidence in, because you've ensured that you understand the risks, the rewards, the opportunity cost, and, you know, you understand that the uncertainty could reap even more rewards. Because if you don't, you know, sometimes if you just stay exactly where you are and you don't make decisions to move, it can, you know, make it worse off for you in the long run. So one of my favorite tools to use, and again, this is quite a simplistic version of a decision-making matrix, is this tool really. And the reason why is because you can adapt and change it as much as you want. So if you were to say, for example, let's have a little think about what options we might have available. Let's say I was considering whether to hire a new member of staff, or I was going to train somebody in-house for a new role. Then you might put, you know, A will be, you know, train member of staff. B might be hire or promote internally, and C might be promote advertise externally. And then you'd be looking at you can change the titles at the top, but you might look at whether it fits with the strategy of the organization, whether it fits with the competence base, whether how easily it could be implemented. And you can rate these 1 to 5 and then actually add them up at the end to be able to see which option would work out best. You can also look, there's a different decision matrix where you put you measure one against the other. So would you pick this against that, and then you'll, you know, take all cross? Would you pick this against that, and then you'll take all cross? Would you pick that against this, and then you'll take all cross? And you'll find that the comparisons between the different options will bring you to the best possible option for yourself. So again, it's, you know, it's trial and error to which methods works best for you. But I like this one because, you know, you could list your options and it might be based on different areas. So it could be length of time instead of fit with strategy. It could be, you know, link with the, you know, work with the culture of the organization. It could be, you know, like the cost of doing that. So you can have a number of different titles, but it's a really, really good tool. And there is some examples, and there will be on the problem solving ones as well. Okay, so I mentioned before about the Piers Bolton. And there's loads of different ways to make decisions in groups. And I've just listed down why groups are more effective decision makers, really. And you just got to think about it from main for me, it's that you're looking at making decisions from different perspectives. You know, you really are avoiding being biased. They make you can sometimes, you know, go down one route or just think of it from, you know, a management perspective or a leadership perspective. And it might be good to take advantage as well of the group's strengths, and that might allow you to structure the decision making. You might also be able to gain a lot of buy-in from the different people included if they're part of, you know, if they're going to be affected by the decision that's being made as well. So really think about who you can include in the decision making process. And I think, you know, more so for like if you're managing a project, everyone should be involved in the key decisions that are being made when making that, you know, when running that project. So carefully consider who you're going to have involved in it as well. So there's another area of decision making that looks at you know, the groups decisions and their procedures and how, you know, that can help. But you know, I've listed some of the key points here of functional theory of decision making. So it's good because the problem can be thoroughly discussed to really understand the root cause. Then, you know, you can look at the different criteria of acceptable solutions. So it might be that you need X, Y, and Z done in order for that solution to be solved. And if, you know, you're following this decision making route, then it might be only X and Y are being resolved. So it's important that when you are in a group, you can sometimes even say to people, you need to ensure that this is being covered. So you need to ensure that this is being covered, and you need to ensure that this is being covered, and give people like a specific role to accomplish, or a specific set of criteria to ensure that's being you know, followed and completed in that decision. So then look at the different options, and then you are really going to be assessing and, you know, often evaluating them different options, again linking back to the criteria for what can be an acceptable solution and an acceptable decision moving forwards. And then that way all of the groups completely involved in not only understanding the root cause and why the problem needs to be solved, but also involved in the plan of action to resolve it through, you know, making the decision. And that decision will more than likely be set in stone then, you know, and you know, it can, that decision can maybe become a process and something that's just usual practice for everybody. I have noted down that there's five different things to consider when looking at using, you know, when managing group decision making. And sometimes it's important to be able to look at different procedures to be able to make sure that you overcome problems that routinely kind of arise during you know, decision making. And you might have people involved in the group that's introverts that just don't really want to say anything, but they've got really good ideas, and extroverts that have got a million ideas but just want to be the one voice that's there. So it's important to consider that you don't want unequal participation. And that's why, you know, when I mentioned before about the tiered vote, and I think that's sometimes a good option. It might be good to discuss the problem, think of ideas maybe, and then go through the tiered voting process. Sometimes it's good to have someone who's facilitating these sorts of meetings, decision-making meetings. And that could be someone who's writing the minutes of meeting. For example, it might be that they're pointing out the different ones. It might be that it's someone that's not involved in the decision-making process, just to ensure that you're not going off tangents. And don't put too much pressure on people to actually come up with ideas, because maybe they just might not know. And remember that time is, you know, is of the essence. So maybe try and stick to 30 minutes or an hour, or use like a specific exercise where questions are asked at key points within the meeting or the session in order to get to the end. And then I've noted difficulty of balancing tasks and rational dimensions. Now that's important to consider, you know, when making decisions. It's important to stay on task, stay on focus, and make sure that the decisions that you are making are rational, and that you know, even if they do need to be authorized, that you understand that can be, you have got the authority and the autonomy to actually make that decision, you know, in the decision making process. Because otherwise it can just go on, and then you can be waiting for somebody to give you an answer to the decision that you want to make, and it can just go on and on and on. So some types of procedures that you can outline before you go into meetings with, you know, of group decision making could be putting down a standard agenda, and that might be just, you know, on the minutes of meeting. It might be that you're going into a, you know, with a brainstorming plan. It might be that you're looking at nominal group techniques, so you're looking at different techniques for people to give their ideas. It might be that you're looking at consensus, so you're seeing who agrees with what ideas and at what points. It might be, again, going back to different types of voting methods, and it doesn't necessarily just need to be the tiered ones. It might be that you use a, you know, a rating, so it's 1 to 5, and then you add them up at the end, and then you find out the numerical values for each decision, and then whichever ones that's got the highest gets that point. And again, you know, ranking, you know, you could think about ranking in relation to risk. So you might have one as red, amber, and green, and it might be that, you know, the green one's the one that, you know, that might be the decision that's going to be the least amount of risk. So considering the procedures when looking at group decision making is really, really, really important, because it will just allow you to have a good flow to the decision making process. I mentioned earlier on about decision trees, and I just thought to give it an example of one here. You can see in this example that the decision is to invest in equipment and expertise that will generate the greatest benefits, really. And the table on the left hand side breaks down what has been found in the decision tree. Now this is quite a complex one, and I think it's good because it looks at possibility ratings as well in this one. So it doesn't necessarily say this is 100% going to happen, but it gives you a possibility rating, and that's sometimes useful when considering costing and budgets as well. So have a good think about that. But you can see how, the branches tee off into two different areas. So it looks at the different points, it looks at the different segments, and it's a good visual. If you're presenting different options for different decisions to maybe a team of people, it sometimes might be good to give them visuals like this, and just provide quite a bit of detail. So you might want to give it to them before a presentation so they can really review it, look into it, and come back to you with whether they agree, they don't agree, or what the thought process is on it. There's a couple of different types of decision trees as well, and there's a couple of templates on Moodle for you to have a look at as well. So, once you've formulated a decision, it's important then to, go ahead and follow it through. And, because decisions can be made, and if they're not followed through, they won't actually impact on people. If you make a decision to train a new member of staff, you don't want to leave it free. You want to put an action plan into place in order to be able to follow through with that decision that you have made. It might be that the problem is that you've got staff that are arguing all the time, and you've come to the conclusion that the root cause of that problem is that they are not happy with the rota. So your plan of action might be to review the rota every couple of months, and you might have an activity planner for that in order to give yourself a target date and look at the resources that are required. Think about the person that's either going to be in charge, you're going to be reviewing or monitoring what your action is. And I think it's also important to recognize that when you do implement a decided option, you should really think about who's going to be responsible for the decision being made, who's going to be accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who needs to be informed. And I know it's not, it might not always be a project when you're solving problems and making decisions, but a Raki matrix is involved in that. You might have seen it before. It's a square and it's got RACI. But when you are making decisions and you're putting plans in place to action them decisions, it's important to understand who's responsible for each task in that decision, who's going to be accountable for it, who needs to be consulted when maybe it's being completed, or when you need something or other, and who needs to be informed about what's going to happen. Because if you don't inform people of actions that are happening, then it can really cause rifts within an organization. And I've seen it one too many times that if actions aren't communicated to people, then it can cause serious issues, more conflicts, and really affect the culture of an organization as a whole. So yeah, I have aimed to break down decision making tools and techniques that can be used to assist. I really do hope that you have found this video useful. Again, this is the second in a series of solving problems and making decisions. So if you haven't already looked at the first session, please look back at that. And then as always, if you have any questions in relation to this topic, please contact me. Thank you very much for watching today, and have a good day.